welcome everybody. It's been a nice a few weeks working with the guys from GL and getting them to allow us to open up our doors a little so that we can show people what we do behind the scenes. It's been quite a nice process for us to review the things that we're doing in order to share them with everyone. And I'm going to start just saying exactly the same thing as I have at the start of the other webinars. We're all on a journey with this. Just because we are happy to share what we're doing doesn't mean that all of our answers are right. Doesn't mean that we are the polished article in that sense. We're still trying to fully understand this process. We're just happy to share. So if you have any other feedback for us, if you have any other suggestions or anything that you think could help benefit us, please do connect with us. We are reaching the final of our viewpoints in this series. There are other viewpoints to data, and we just didn't, when I said to Andy we can go for 12 weeks, he didn't take us up on that offer. But we've been through, if I just go through who we have been, if you like. The first presentation was from myself. I looked at data at JESS from an SLT viewpoint. Then we had Amy Mulgrew come and present the viewpoint of the class teacher. Then we had Emma Dibden came and presented the lens of the Learning Support Department. And Janine is here today. She's the head of Learning and Progress at the school. She is head of year 2, and she is by far my right-hand woman. I don't know how I would manage to do all of the stuff in the school without her. Very, very much appreciate everything that she brings and the expertise that she brings. And today she's going to give you the point of view of a year group leader. Some schools may not have year group leaders, so if I try and explain that role slightly, we're a 4-form entry school. We have around, we're in the middle of the desert, there we are. We have around 700 children in the school, and we're a 4-form entry school. So in Janine's year 2, there are 4 classes. She works as the middle leader to make sure that that year group is as tightly knit as possible. We often say that the year group leader in our school is the hardest job in the school. You still have a class, you're teaching day to day, but you sit on the middle leadership team and help drive the school forward. So we're going to get some excellent expertise which will cross the boundary really between what a senior leader does, but by somebody who is in the classroom day to day, which is a fantastic viewpoint. So we're a British curriculum school. We are a primary school. We go to up to 11 years old, and then we feed into our sister school, which has a secondary school on a separate site. So I'm going to, at this point, you've heard enough from me over the last few weeks, so I'm going to pass on to Janine, who's going to talk you through the lens of a year group leader and what they bring to our Rubik's Cube model.
Thanks very much, Luke, for that lovely introduction. So morning and afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to share what we do at JESS Jumeirah, and today, obviously, from the perspective of a year group leader. I'm hoping that you'll be able to take away quite a few strategies that you can put into place quite easily if you feel that they would be beneficial for your school. So I'm going to start off with one of the first things as a year group leader, and something that I would encourage my whole team to do is at the very beginning of the year, within the first week or 2, is to really get to know your students. So looking at their individual needs as a group of learners as well. We would achieve this through having our learning conversations with children. And in those moments, we are asking questions to hopefully elicit a little bit more about the child. So really trying to find out the nuts and bolts of what makes them as a learner, their styles. So we might ask questions like, what's their favourite subject? How do they like to learn? Do they prefer to work independently or in a group? What do they feel their strengths are? So not necessarily what a teacher has previously told them, but what they really feel they're strong in, and also what they find difficult. So what do they, in a daily class lesson, what do they find is, something that is a struggle for them? We combine that with doing quite a intense teacher handover with the previous class teacher. and year group leader. So this is between the class teacher, year group leader, but also our learning support department, which we call the OASIS. And our senior leadership team are also involved in those handovers. So at all levels, from SLT, middle leaders, classroom teachers, everyone is aware of those headline cases, we call them really. The children who are possibly on the AEN, SEN register are gifted and talented students. And we also, in those first couple of weeks, really make sure that we're on top of the children who have made less than expected progress in the previous year. So through those handover discussions, the previous teacher and year group leader provides a really deep background into these individual cases and the reasons behind them. And we also include in those conversations any social and emotional needs of the students, and also any significant parental conversations. So it's all one huge big picture really of each child. We then look at the PASS survey to help us with this as well. So when we look at the previous year's PASS surveys, we look at these to see if they match up to what we see of the child. Does their perception of themselves as a learner surprise us? Do they come across as very confident in class, the most sociable, key to take on leadership roles, yet the PASS survey indicates that there's actually a mismatch there between their perception and what other people are seeing. A few weeks later in the term, in weeks 4 to 5, children then complete the new PASS survey. This helps us very early on in the year identify those potential vulnerable learners, and we can establish very early on any issues which we would need to address. And I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. So once we have that picture of each child, we then look at our data. We do a deep analysis of the data available to us. Currently, as a year group leader for year 2, we are triangulating the data between attainment from the PTM and PT6 results, and also the PASS. Higher up the school, we also include the CATS and obviously the science, the PTS in this mix. So I'll talk through the process of using the CATS and progress tests as a starting point in term 1 of the year. As a year group leader, I will sit down with my line manager from SLT, so in my case it's Mr. Rees, Luke beside me, and the other previous year group leader. And we analyse our data available to us through Power BI. So that is the tool that we use to help us dig a little bit deeper with our data. We can look at it from many angles, and I could sit here, as Luke said, I could sit here all day and talk about the many different ways that we can look at it. But I'm trying to pick out today one of the biggest strengths for us really. Primarily at the beginning of the year, what I want to know as a year group leader is, what are the next steps for this particular year group? Where are the gaps in their learning? Where are the strengths? And what are we going to do as a year group to further enhance these steps, but also identify the gaps and plug the gaps? So on this example, we can see our end of year data for my current year group. So when meeting with the year 3 year group leader, I will be looking at the obvious gaps in knowledge, which if we look at here, we have a very high number attaining Steinine 5 or above across English and maths, but we have quite a difference between English and maths when we look at Steinine 6. Just trying to move that. Oh, there we go. So if we look at Steinine 6, and above, we're sitting very comfortably at 75% of our current year group in English attaining 6 and above, which is obviously something that we're very proud of. But if we compare that to our maths, you can see there's a slight, quite a significant difference there between our numbers attaining 6 and above in maths. So for me, feeding that forward to the year 3 year group leader, and obviously Luke on SLT, straight off the bat in September, year 3 will be addressing this. When we look at our PTM results for the year group a little bit deeper, we can see, which I'm just going to bring up now, that we're still, compared to the national average, we're doing really well. Our kids our students are outperforming, and these are results that we're very proud of. But when we dig a little bit deeper, we can see obviously there's the strengths and areas that still need to be worked on. So here we can see that number, we're sitting comfortably at 64%. However, for us at JESS, Jamira, that percentage is usually a little bit higher in number. So for this cohort, we can see that that's something that we're going to be continuing to try to strengthen. We're setting really great scores there for geometry measurement. But again, it really does highlight where those strengths and areas to develop are lying. If we look at the further breakdown, we can then, this is really a helpful, this is one of the most important pages in the PT report, that you've got that breakdown of those 4 sections really in areas of learning. But what's really useful is then on the next page, we can see the actual breakdown in terms of fluency, reasoning, problem solving. So for this particular year group, although there's only 3 questions for problem solving, we would obviously like that percentage to be greater than 46%, I think it's looking at. Likewise, so mathematical reasoning, 21 questions, and again, 50%, 59%. So areas there that we can definitely continue to improve. And that's then really significant for the next year group leader to have this available to them. Sorry.
Yeah. Something that we've noticed, so myself and Janine, understanding the strengths of the year 2 year group, looking at the data is part of that. We also do the quality assurance program, which we call professional reflections at school. And when you go on a journey around and you watch the lessons that are going on in the day, we would agree that some of the things that we need to continue to look at are backed up in the data. So when we flick through this again, as Janine has said, understanding that number is an area that needs to be improved over the coming years, and understanding that it's mathematical reasoning within that number is a key point for us in order to be able to create the right direction for the children going forward. And one of the things that Amy spoke about a few weeks ago was making sure that mathematical reasoning became part of your day-to-day teaching. That making sure that as teachers we do a lot on the fluency, we do a lot of facts and procedures, and then in the past we've done problem-solving days or problem-solving weeks, but making sure now that the mathematical reasoning and problem-solving becomes part of your daily diet too, and that's something that we'll be focusing on with this year group as well.
Thanks, Luke. Okay, so moving on. Yes, it's all, as Luke says, it's all very well that we've had this data and been able to identify so much from it, but the most important question is, so what do we do with it? So as a year group leader, one of the ways that I map out and track our next steps is our action plan. The cohort that I currently had came up to me quite low in measurement. The percentage of children answering questions on measurement was at 45% at the end of year one. So on my action plan for the year group, one of our focuses was to increase children's understanding and application of measurement. And we decided we would achieve that by making sure that across all planning that we were looking for exciting, creative ways to include measurement, to provide opportunities for children to independently use and apply measuring in continuous provision and central area activities, so that not only were children being given the opportunity to use and apply within the classroom, but they could lead their learning and decide on their next steps in the central area when it came to measuring. So we achieved that through designing STEM projects and just looking for as many opportunities to include measurement across the curriculum. So for example, on one of our recent STEM projects, our topic has been festivals and celebrations, and we designed a STEM project for the children to design and make a float for a carnival. We ensured the children were measuring the length and height of their projects. They were given a brief, and they had to make sure that their float was the correct, had all the correct measurements and dimensions. So it wasn't, necessarily a straightforward maths lesson. It was using those skills that they'd already acquired, but in a different context. Like I've mentioned, our continuous provision activities are designed to provide opportunities for the children to, again, apply their skills in a purposeful environment.
Do you mind if I get you to explain there, Janine, as well, continuous provision? Because I think it's it's a term that comes from the early years that we've tried to pull through the rest of the school. People might not be familiar with that phrase. Yeah, I can see your face. You're happy I've asked you that question.
Yeah. Well, personally, for me, I had been upper key stage 2 for quite a few years, and continuous provision was something that I'd always heard so much about from colleagues lower down the school. So when I came to year 2, I was very excited to get to grips with it. It is something that we as a school are, developing higher up in the school as well. But lower down in years 1 to FS, it's a real strength of the schools. The children have the opportunity to lead their learning basically in continuous provision. Objectives are delivered within the class and extended. They're delivered then in the continuous provision activities in different ways, so that the children apply those skills in a range of contexts. There's opportunities for children to work independently, to work in a group, and really as teachers with a very tight timetable, these are just perfect opportunities for us to cover the curriculum in creative ways. So we did notice, for example, there was a little bit of an issue for a small minority of children with fine motor skills who came into us this year. So one of our continuous provision activities was to set up sewing, needlework activities, which was the children absolutely loved, had a great time, didn't realise that they were actually developing that skill. They just thought it was a great activity. So yes, our continuous provision is really successful. The children absolutely love it. We make sure that they get out to the continuous provision. We're very fortunate that we have what we call the central area. So our classrooms all basically come off one central area. So we're connected. We've got a very much like an open plan feel with windows into the classrooms. So it does feel like just an extension of the classroom. So yes, just going back then to adapting the curriculum, I started off with my action plan and I identified what we're going to work on as a year group, and then we adapt the curriculum to accommodate that. So these are just some pictures here of how we do that, and there's role play opportunities, we, even down to SPAG, we can make sure that any gaps are being plugged. So suffixes, prefixes, notoriously really difficult for year twos. So there's our suffix tree where the children can add their own post-it notes to the tree, so it's interactive. Moving on now to something that we call pupil progress here at JESS. So not only do we look at the data available to us from GL, we also use our pupil progress as a chance to reflect on the needs of each year group. I think Luke has touched on this in an earlier session, but I'd like to give you an idea of how effective it is as a year group leader, not just at the beginning of the year, but throughout the year. During the handover with the previous year group leader, we have looked at the pupil progress sheets together. These help us get a 360 view of each student and each class in the year group. So each class teacher will look through the pupil progress with the previous class teacher, but as a year group leader, I do the same with the previous year group leader for the entire year group. Not only is attainment included, but we also importantly flag up and highlight any other significant information. So for example, children who have not made expected progress are identified, and the class teacher will have given the backstory for why this might be the case. So it could be from attendance issues, barriers to learning have been identified just this year, social and personal issues. And more importantly than this, the teacher recommends what's needed to support that child and these group of children. So it's not just about identifying who they are, we actually think about what needs to be done the following year to ensure that this child makes the expected or more than expected progress. So this could be a recommendation of support in the form of BRP, which is the Better Reading Programme, which is a scheme that we use at JESS Jumeirah. We've used now for quite a few years and we find it hugely successful, really good results from the Better Reading Programme. Not only in terms of comprehension, but children's confidence with reading. We see such a huge difference in the classroom with that. There could be a recommendation for another program that we use, which is called First Class at Number. So this is just an example of some of the things that we would put into place and we would reflect on. So would we be looking at OASIS support in class X amount of days a week? Would we be looking at OASIS working one-on-one with a particular child? And again, OASIS is our learning support department. We also have, like I've mentioned, First Class at Number, which again is a program that we use in Key Stage 1 to really support those low attainers, and we give them that little boost. So here you can see when we decide on the intervention and who would benefit from it, looking at our PT results, it becomes, it really gives us that picture of the children who are not meeting the standards and need a boost. So we would be looking at children not only at their standardised score and their stay 9, but we'd also be looking at that, having that conversation as a year group leader. I'd be chatting to the class teacher and making sure that we're choosing the right students. So yes, they might have quite a low score in this, but the class teacher might feel that actually in class they're actually showing that they're secure or doing well, and so it would not be the right thing to give that child the support at that time. So we do really take a lot of time. We collaborate with OASIS on making those decisions, and SLT when deciding which children should receive what support. So once that's been decided, those strategies are put into place, and we then sit down at least once a term to review and reflect on the progress of those children that we've selected. Similarly, in English, We use an online tool called Nessie that I'm sure some of you are familiar with. So looking at our PT results, the cohort that I had, 65% of the year group were standing 6 or above in the SPI component of the test. And the phonics screener completed at the end of year 1 also indicated some children were below the age-related expectations. When I looked at the breakdown of the PTE more closely, I could see attainment in spelling was 58%, which was the lowest in comparison to the 3 other areas there of phonic knowledge and skills, grammar and punctuation and reading comprehension. So Nessie is, as I said, the online tool. We decide on a yearly basis as a year group how many subscriptions we will actually buy. And that is dependent on the needs of the year group. So there might be, next year, we might only need 5 Nessie subscriptions, for example. We put the Nessie support into place. We help parents understand how to use the website, and we encourage the children to use the website within school time and in their own home time. The Nessie, I'm just going to show you now, this is one child's is showing their engagement on the website, and over the last few months, I think it's something like 800 hours this child has been on Nessie, so very committed to it. And interestingly, this is the particular child's writing at the beginning of year 2. So quite significant spelling issues, high frequency words not being hit. So this was earlier April. So you can see the progress that this child has made, and Nessie, I think, is hugely, part of that process as well for that child. Spelling's really increased, so that's a success for us. So I've talked about a few examples of how we support our vulnerable learners, our weaker learners, but in the same way we use our data and knowledge of the children to provide opportunities for our more able students. And we are ensuring that there's that depth and mastery. We make sure we give them the opportunities for competitions with other schools. We enter international competitions, for example, the poetry competition, Young Writers, which is an international competition. And yeah, these opportunities, I mean, the children obviously thrive on, but they are providing them with those opportunities to work at that depth and mastery level. Going back to pupil progress, if we think then mid-year and consistently thinking about where those strengths are, we can track progress and attainment over time. So on Power BI, we're in the fortunate position of being able to see really clearly whether you're into your graphs or whether you're into tables. It's everyone's catered for, really. And you can see for this year group in English, which is the green line, we've got a really nice picture there of that year group increasing year on year. We can see in maths that there's been a slight dip, and it is slight. It's literally, yeah, very insignificant. But again, it does provide us with that picture for that year group. And as a year group leader, it's invaluable. So the tables, for me, this is how I like to look at it. And it breaks it down really nicely. So for this particular year group, you can track from year 1, year 2, year 3, how are those numbers looking year on year, and is there a particular area that needs to be identified? So for this year group, if you look from year 1, stay down 6 and above. If we look at maths, they're going from 68% in year 1, 77% in year 2, and 90% in year 3. So whatever's happening in maths across year 1, 2, and 3 for that year group, it's working. And again, this is just to give you the little bit more of a view there of looking at that attainment over time, year on year. And we do that with our standardised score results, but we also do it with looking at the stay lines. So there's science has come in year 4 for this year group. We don't have that year 3 data there for them. But again, some strange things going on, and there's so many ways that you can look at it, and there's so many conversations that come from it. So I'm getting to the end of the presentation. I'm hoping that this has been useful for you, and that you've been able to get an insight into how, as a year group leader, we triangulate our data in many different ways, but primarily it's about how we use it, what impact it has, and it's all for every single child. Thank you very much.